Hasan Minhaj, the well-renowned Muslim Indian American stand-up comedian, has created quite a clout for himself through his Islamo-leftist propaganda, masquerading as comedy shows. Over the years, he has given anecdotal examples to insinuate and imply that he has been a victim of racial discrimination in the US. This alleged discrimination was not only because of him being an Indian, but an Indian Muslim and also having political views. He has especially helped propagate the Muslims in Modi's India under attack narrative on an international platform. What if I told you that at least 3 of his most prominent anecdotes where he claimed to be a victim of racial discrimination as an Indian Muslim in the US were fake? That he did not exaggerate real-life incidents to create a humor, but to peddle and further a political agenda which only helped his career. You have heard it correctly. Last month on September 15th, The New Yorker published a report titled Hasan Minhaj's Emotional Truths, which debunked all the comic racial harassment stories of Hasan Minhaj as just a false narrative of victimization. Let's start off by telling you about one of the many lies Hasan Minhaj told his audience about the fake victimhood. This was during his 2022 Netflix stand-up special show The King's Jester. After the 9/11 terror attacks in New York, there were reportedly some incidents of racial discrimination and alleged hate crimes against Muslims in the US. To cash in on the actual victims who may have faced this discrimination, Minhaj conjured up fables. He narrated an incident which he claimed happened in 2002, just a year after the 9/11 attack. He was a junior in high school. A fairly muscular white man, which he called as Brother Eric, who later turned out to be an FBI informant, infiltrated his family's Sacramento area mosque and tried to entice the young boys into talking about jihad.
Think about jihad.
And as soon as Hasan decided to mess with him by saying that he wanted to get a pilot's license, this whole group of police officials gathered around his house. They dragged Hasan outside and banged his head against the car. Through this, he tried to insinuate how the Patriot Act, passed by the US government, was discriminating and did racial profiling of innocent people to pander to the whole Islamophobia narrative. Except that's not how things had happened. Craig Montley, the former FBI informant on whom Minhaj based his anecdote, was in prison in 2002 and had not begun to work for the FBI until 2006. In fact, he also stated that he had worked only in Southern California and not the Sacramento area. So while the racial profiling may have been a lived experience of some, it did not happen to Minhaj the way he claimed. Minhaj lied of being a victim of hate crime for a political agenda. What if I told you Minhaj not only created a fake victimhood story about himself, but he also dragged in his daughter?
Rip it open, I flip it over, and all this white powder falls into the stroller. And it falls on my daughter's shoulder.
So Hasan starts off by telling how he received a letter with some white powder in it, which accidentally falls on his young daughter. They rush to the hospital and he gets lucky that the white powder is not anthrax. This is yet another lie which was confirmed by the New York Police Department, who stated that they have no record of such an incident as narrated by Hasan. In fact, neither the area's hospitals nor Minhaj's Patriot Act employees involved in the show's security could recall any such incident. Surprisingly, Minhaj himself had admitted that his daughter had never been exposed to a white powder and that she hadn't been hospitalized. Hasan Minhaj lied about a possible anthrax attack on himself and accidentally exposed his daughter to it. Next lie that Hasan Minhaj made was during his first Netflix special, Homecoming King, where he recounts a story of a young heartbreak and racism.
I see this dude, Jeff Burke, putting a corsage on Bethany's wrist.
Hasan recalls how this young white girl had promised to go to prom with him, but when he appeared at her doorstep, he saw that girl with another boy who was putting a corsage on her waist. Hasan stated how the girl's parents did not want their daughter to take pictures with a brown boy because they were concerned what their relatives might think.
A lot of family back home in Nebraska, and we're going to be taking a lot of photos tonight, so we don't think it'd be a good fit.
But you know what? That young girl, who is a woman now, has disputed certain facts. She stated that she turned down Minhaj a few days before the dance itself. In fact, that woman stated that she and her family had been facing online threats, Since then, because Hasan had insufficiently disguised her identity along with the fact that she was engaged to an Indian American man. It now seems that Hasan Minhaj had been fabricating such racial and radicalizing stories just to further the avenue of his career. Recalling some other past instances, during the 2019 Howdy Modi event in Houston, Hasan Minhaj spread this news that he had been denied entry into the event because of his critical comments on PM Modi, and thus he has been blacklisted.
Mr. Minhaj, we are at a space and you've been denied because of some of the comments you have made.
Well, actually, this is yet another of his numerous lies, which was clarified by the then in charge of the Foreign Affairs Department of the BJP, Vijay Chauthiwale.
The episode is that he was not registered as a media. So he was offered a seat as one out of 50,000, which he was not prepared. And he wanted a specific seat or arena where the media is going. And that was the...
He stated that Hasan was denied entry into the event because he had not registered himself as a media person and he had refused to be seated as an ordinary audience along with 50,000 other people. But by then, Minhaj had managed to garner a lot of Islamo-leftist support for the so-called brave act of standing up to Narendra Modi and spread the narrative how Modi is afraid of a Muslim journalist of Indian descent. Later in 2020, online streaming platform Netflix had cancelled Hasan's Patriot Act show for unknown reasons. The show debuted in October 2018 on Netflix and was to have about 6 seasons. Hasan Minhaj, what we can recall, is one of the most successfully Muslim Indian Americans. For doing an interview with Barack Obama to being one of the leading candidates to succeed Trevor Noah as the new host of The Daily Show, and to being selected as one of the most influential people by the Times magazine in 2019. Hasan has been one of the top positions in America, a position he reached after creating numerous such fables of racism through his comic acts. Comedians often exaggerate real-life incidents to add that comic timing and comic value. It is a part of the game, except Minhaj did not conjure up a story about possible anthrax attack on his daughter for his political view for a few laughs. He did it for his political agenda and to perpetuate the Muslim victimhood theory, which is where the problem lies. Do you know of any such self-proclaimed stand-up comics who further a political agenda in the name of comedy and speaking truth to power?